Hello, welcome to today's video about advanced Hebrew and Greek Bible resources. I produced an earlier video about my favorite Hebrew and Greek Bible resources on a budget, but today's video is dedicated to the multi-volume sets that are available and exceptionally helpful. I would like to start with the standard Hebrew and Greek lexicons. And here we have on the left screen the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament, which is very much a established, well-researched, thorough resource that has been in usage for decades and is well established in the field. And to the right, you see a Greek English lexicon of the New Testament and other early Christian literature in its third edition. In my previous video, I had recommended the second edition for those seeking a resource on a budget. But for those who can afford it, this third edition is definitely the way to go. It provides in-depth treatment of Greek words, not only in terms of their usage in the New Testament, but it also goes further back into classical Greek. It includes Septuagintal Greek, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, and it even, as it implies in the title, by mentioning other early Christian literature, ventures out into the early patristic writings. And these are both the standard resources that I would recommend. However, I do want to bring up another resource that is incredibly valuable, the Dictionary of Classical Hebrew. I have all of these resources digitally through Logos Bible software. So I'd like to mention this one as an excellent multi-volume Hebrew lexicon that has less of an emphasis on etymology and cognate languages and much more of an emphasis on how the words are used in their specific lexical context. In my previous video, I had mentioned the importance of theological wordbooks as a complement to lexicons. The Theological Wordbook of the Old Testament is an excellent jumping-off point for such a resource. It provides interesting treatment of words that appear in the Old Testament with an emphasis on their theological meaning within the belief and the practice of ancient Israel. On the New Testament side, I really enjoy the Exegetical Dictionary of the New Testament. It's a fantastic 3-volume work that provides every word that appears in the Greek New Testament and gives in-depth treatment of those words. And one specific feature that I like about the Exegetical Dictionary of the New Testament is at the beginning of every entry, it gives you an outline of what you'll be reading as you proceed through the entry, which I think is a really nice feature. But now that I've introduced these two initially for word studies, I'd like to talk about 3 sets of other resources. We have the complementary volumes of the Theological Lexicon of the Old Testament and the Theological Lexicon of the New Testament. Both of these are good mid-sized resources. Interestingly enough, both of these do not treat every single word that appears in either the Hebrew Old Testament or the Greek New Testament, but the words that they do treat tend to have more in-depth information. In general, if you would like to do a word study and you'd like a wider coverage, I actually would recommend the preceding lexicons because they give wider coverage, the TWOT or the EDNT that we just talked about. But in terms of mid-sized resources for word studies that cover a lot of words, these would be good choices. Our resource on the left, TLOT, is translated from a German work and offers a lot of insight about etymology and grammar, and even delves into form criticism and tradition criticism. So it is a technical work at times, but offers interesting information. The work on the right, the Theological Lexicon of the New Testament, is very focused on theological reception of the ideas of the New Testament words. So you might have obviously a focus on the writers themselves in the New Testament and how they understood or appeared to use the words in the specific passages that they're writing. But then in addition to that, there can be discussion of how those words were received and used by the patristic authors that we mentioned earlier. Well, you could get additional unpacking of those ideas here. Now I'd like to go on to the New International Dictionary of Old Testament Theology and Exegesis, 5-volume set, and On the other side, to the right, the New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology and Exegesis, also a 5-volume set. Both of these are very accessible works for somebody who doesn't have an extensive background in Hebrew or Greek. You could find your way around these resources. They offer keys with guides that have English terms that can be looked up and would give you the corresponding page numbers and ways to get to the Hebrew and Greek original terms. In addition, they're each coded with a numbering system that can help you find the information that you need. And just in general, they offer a lot of helpful information. They're quite extensive and very high quality, very helpful resources. I find myself turning to these quite often. And then our final set are the Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament, 15 volumes, and the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, 10 volumes, both of these translated from original German works. In terms of scholarship and depth of material and extensive treatment of the Greek and Hebrew terms, these works are in many ways unparalleled. I'll say for the Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament, right after the headword for each article, each Hebrew term that's addressed, it gives you an outline of what will be covered. I think that's so helpful. This resource is so extensive, and I find when I really want to go deep in a word study, this is a place to go. And when I've done academic writing, this would be the resource that I would turn to. For the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, in a lot of ways, it parallels what I just said about the Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament, but there are some concerns in terms of how the lexical data is analyzed. Some people have mentioned how words are explained in their development over time is helpful, but some of the parallel analysis of terms as they appear in different books in the New Testament are confusing or problematic. And so, in that sense, there is some criticism for this resource, but I think in general, the amount of content that it provides is still very helpful, and it is still well established in the field. I want to thank you for taking time to look at this information with me. I'm really excited about using each of these resources and sharing that with you. And I would love to hear some of your own comments about the resources that you enjoy using and that you find helpful. For the last video I did, I was very pleased by the feedback I received, and actually that feedback inspired this video today. So I hope that you took something away from this, or that something was useful or helpful in this video. And until next time, goodbye.